Bună ziua încă o dată și bine v-am regăsit. Am revenit în forță la partea a doua a forumului nostru, Social Urban Chișinău 2023. Vă salutăm încă o dată, sperăm că ați mâncat bine, sunteți plini de energie și gata de a asimila de la experți informație pe care o întâlnim pentru prima dată la noi. De exemplu, unii. Cum ar fi ce înseamnă bildung. Asta vom afla astăzi. Dacă vă imaginați că în orașul nostru cumva ar putea exista mai mult bildung decât mașini, atunci fiți cu ochii pe scenă pentru că veți afla cam cum, teoretic, ar sta lucrurile în Chișinăul în care trăim. Doamnelor și domnilor, vă invit să veniți cu cele mai puternice aplauze pentru următorul vorbitor a evenimentului nostru, și anume Adela Guțu-Scutaru, directoare oficiul DVV Internațional în Moldova.
Bună ziua! De fapt, eu nu voi fi vorbitorul cheie. Eu sunt onorată să invit în scenă un oaspete deosebit de drag și scump pentru noi, scump în sensul că aduce niște concepte absolut unice în Republica Moldova. Ce este bildung sună așa un pic nemțește, un pic din alte zone. O să ne explice invitata noastră, care are un nume similar cu numele unui povestitor din țara în care s-a născut. Este vorba de Rachel ANDERSEN și vine din Danemarca, țara de baștină a faimosului povestitor. Este și dânsa scriitoare, are peste 20 de cărți publicate, dar până a deveni, dar nu scrie povești, scrie despre faptul cum se dezvoltă democrația, ce înseamnă dezvoltare în general, și o să înțelegeți de ce DVV Internațional sau DVV Internațional, cum sună în numele nostru în germană, a invitat acest vorbitor. Suntem promotorii conceptului de educație, de învățare și educație a adulților. Ca lumea să înțeleagă că nu este vorba doar de bună creștere, dar este vorba de un concept foarte larg, o invit la microfon pe musafira noastră de la Copenhaga, Lene, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to Chișinău. It's the first time that I'm here, and I am amazed by your beautiful city, and I would absolutely love to come back. I'm going to talk about Bildung, which is a German word, and even the English language does not have a word for Bildung, so I'm going to introduce what it is. I have now been part of introducing it into the English language and into the Ukrainian language. So now we're going to try with Moldova and Romania as well. Bildung it's a German word. Bild means image in German. And originally it was a Christian concept where you formed yourself in the image of Christ. So you became as Christ-like and Christian as you could become. Due to the Enlightenment in the 1700s, it kind of disappeared out of the German language, and nobody wanted to become like Christ anymore, at least not the people who wrote books and, gave long speeches. But in the late 1700s, it became a secular concept, and the image, the bild, was the image of you. How could you unfold and become as fully you as only you could become you? So it's a personal development, it's being cultivated, it's learning how to behave and be a full human being in the society that you're in. The way that I describe Bildung now, to make it a little bit more tangible and useful for people who are in education, is that I describe it as two different kinds of knowledge. One is the kind of knowledge that you can transfer from person to person, or as a lecturer, a teacher, to a group of students. So we can call it the horizontal kind of knowledge that is easily transferable from person to person. And that is what we usually talk about or think of when we say education. So it can be math, science, geography, learning another language, or practical things like learning how to bake a bread, make a meal, fix a bicycle, or something like that. Book a plane ticket online. That would be easily transferable knowledge. The knowledge that is almost impossible to transfer is life experience. It is emotional learning. It is what it means to fall in love, for instance, and then they break up with you and you're heartbroken. And you try to tell it to somebody who has never been in love before and who has not had their heart broken. And you can describe it as much as you want, they will not understand what you're talking about. But if they have been in love and somebody has broken up with them, they will know exactly what you're talking about. So there is a resonance in the other person, but you cannot transfer the emotion. Other things could be giving birth, raising a family, having to function in a workplace, taking responsibility as a citizen. There are many things that you can only learn by experience, and you cannot transfer the knowledge. To some extent, we could transfer these emotions via the arts. There's music that can sort of make you feel things that the composer was feeling, and the musicians. But particularly literature is good at transferring these experiences from person to person. A novel that is well written can allow you to identify with somebody who goes through experiences you have never had, but you can feel at least some of the emotions that that person would go through in the novel. So we can actually sort of train our emotional muscle if we read good literature. To some extent, we can do it with movies and other art forms. But in movies, there's images and there's music, and it shows you very directly what kind of emotions the movie wants you to have. Reading a book, it's a much more demanding job to take the letters, turn them into words, and then the words into images in your brain, and then you create the emotions. It's a much more complex cognitive experience. So one of the things that I usually say to teachers when we talk about bildung is you need to read stories to the kids. And it's not just something you should do when they have behaved, or you want to be kind, or you have 10 minutes left during the lesson because now they deserve a story. It's actually one of the most important things you can do for a number of reasons. One is that they learn to create their own images in their mind. They also learn new words, new vocabularies, and they can learn your tradition and your cultural heritage. The same goes with singing and dancing, where they also learn to coordinate their singing, their breath with other people, and with dancing they learn to coordinate their bodies. So this is something that school systems usually think of as sort of a luxury, an add-on when they've deserved it, but really it ought to be the core of education. So that's the kind of sort of the emotions and life experience is what you cannot transfer easily from person to person. And then there's the upbringing, what we do with children as the adults. We tell them how to behave, and sometimes we do it with other adults. It's not very popular, but sometimes it's necessary. So we bring people up to an expectation of certain behavior. Can be in the workplace, can be in the family, can be among friends, etc. So these two kinds of knowledge, the transferable kind of knowledge and the non-transferable kind of knowledge, together they are bildung. And the struggle with the knowledge that you really have to make an effort and you have to make it your own, that is bildung. What is also bildung is that we're all born different. So some have some talents, other people have other talents, you have different desires, or things that you want and that you really like to do. And so we all make this our own in our own personal way. So bildung is always very unique and personal, but it is also social, because you cannot have bildung alone. Bildung is something that you do in a community. It's becoming part of a community. So that is my introduction to bildung itself, and then I'm going to say something about what would our cities look like if we had more bildung than cars. I have now been taken from the airport into Chișinău in a car, and I could tell there were a lot of cars in the street, and a lot of them were just parked along the street, and there could be tons of other stuff in that place. So let's see what we can do without cars. Let me see, can I move my slides now? There you go. And does this work? There it is. So I just wanted to find a picture of something beautiful, but also something that was created for education and for bildung and for lifting the spirit. So we used to have religion as the defining learning place in culture in our civilization. We did it in Europe, they did it in Asia, I mean it's everywhere around the globe. Before the modern world, getting together to learn took place in a religious context. And it had these high aspirations. And in order to get people into the mood of learning, they built the buildings as beautiful as they could. Next slide. Does this work, or are we just pretending that it works? Because when I click, nothing happens, and then a while after the picture changes. Does it work? Does anybody know? Good, it works, thank you. So this is another example of a temple of beauty. Somebody wanting people to expand their mind and experience something else. And here should be another one. So different cultures have done their utmost to make the learning process, the socialization process as beautiful as possible. We've also done it with, I clicked, there it is, a church. So here you go in and you really feel that this is important. Later we had the modern era and industrialization, and we put a lot of effort into making the symbols, the workplaces of the steam engine. I don't know if this is beautiful, but it's majestic. We wanted to show all the power that we had in these new kinds of knowledge that were science and technology. And some of the universities are amazingly beautiful. Take Oxford University, for instance, which is older, actually. But when we built universities 150, 200 years ago, we got the best architects and we poured money into it because we wanted to tell young people that this was special. This is an amazing place and you're going to learn new stuff. We also beautified transportation. This is the metro in Paris. And you can just tell what an effort. And then came this. Thank you. So this is not working. Somebody is cheating me and putting the slides forward. So let's go to the next slide. Thank you. There you go. This is what a lot of cities look like today, or what we prioritized. We just needed as many cars to go through the cities as fast as possible, because now we want to be efficient, productive, and move things and people around. And we have built so much ugly stuff that it's just amazing, and we have not been giving a lot of thought to what does it actually mean to be human? How do we actually connect with other people and with each other? We have prioritized beauty in some places. And next slide, please. Yeah, shopping malls. So those are the new temples. That is where we have the marble floors. We also have it in this hotel. Then we have the nice dark wooden floors, and we have all the lighting, and we do make it as beautiful as we can, because this is the new place to serve the spirit of money. The market is our new god. And so we created these marketplaces where we take the family on the weekends and we spend all the money that we have spent so much time and labor earning through the week. And so of course this new temple has to be beautiful. It has to lure us in there so that we hand over all the money that we spend our time and energy earning. Next slide, please. Yeah, here's another one. We even put in decorations, all kind of stuff to make people feel at home. Well, not at home, but feel some kind of elevated or escalated, I don't know what to call it. So this is where we prioritize today. We serve the market. It has become our new deity. And it could look very different from this. So let's take the next slide. There you go. We could have green cities. We could meet with our neighbors. We could actually be creative and productive together with other people. We could create local communities and get to know each other. Next picture, please. Next slide. Yeah, so this is a modern city where people have prioritized local food production, gardens, urban gardening. And we can do that in all our concrete cities around the globe. There is so much potential for bringing local communities together, for bringing the generations together with the buildings and the cities that we already have. There are no cars in this picture. There's a little bit of road down there in one corner. But we can rethink what it means to be a city. And one of the new ideas for cities is called the 15-minute city. And somebody said, oh, we used to have that in Moldova. It's like it should only take you 15 minutes to commute from the suburbs to the center. This is a different concept because it's about walking and bicycling. So everything that you need on a daily basis should be within a 15-minute distance on foot or on bicycle, which would, of course, take away many of the cars. It would allow us to enjoy fresh air in a different kind of way. Kids could run out and play in the streets, and we could have a completely different kind of neighborhood. And just imagine that everybody in this apartment building shares this rooftop and goes up there and grows their tomatoes and their herbs and their potatoes and all kinds of stuff. And then you chit-chat with your neighbor and you learn a little bit about, so how would I grow the tomatoes better? What are there apples that could grow here? Other fruits and so forth. And so we would have a completely different kind of conversation with our neighbors and other people. So that would be one way of looking at a city with more bildung rather than cars. But I'm also going to give you a little bit of theory behind this, because this is great, but I've developed a model called the Bildung Rose. And I clicked, but doesn't it? So let's see if we can get the next slide. Yeah. It's a very sort of stylistic rose, but you get the image. So this is a picture of any functioning society. It is my claim that all societies that work well have these different domains and that they're balanced. So all societies have production. That's food, shelter, energy. Yeah, clothing. So all the practical stuff that we need, it needs to be there. All societies have that. Even the earliest hunter-gatherers knew where to find their food. They had fires they could keep warm, and they produced meals one way or the other. All societies have technology that allow them to have that production. It can be a stone axe, it can be the internet, and anything in between. All societies have technology that allow them to produce what they need. If the societies work, I could come up with maybe a communist place where it didn't work that well, but I'll get to that in a second. So, all societies have aesthetics. It is a basic human need to have beauty, to create beauty. The earliest human beings had body ornaments, and they beautified their weapons, their technology, and we do it to this very day, and we thrive when we have beauty. We do not thrive. Actually, we're miserable when we do not have beauty around us. And it's a deep need inside of human beings to create beauty. We want to decorate our homes. We put on clothes that we like. I mean, we want to send signals to other people that we're, beautiful people. All societies have power. It can be a shaman in a hunter-gatherer tribe. It can be the priests in a medieval or a traditional society, or it can be the parliament in a modern democratic society. It is also the police, the military, courts, all the institutions that come with running a modern, advanced country. All societies may not have science in the modern academic sense, where you try to come up with a hypothesis and falsify it, and if you cannot prove yourself wrong, you get published in a scientific periodical, but all societies have facts and knowledge about the world that they're in, otherwise they would not survive. All thriving societies also have narratives, stories that hold us together, that tell us what is a good person, what is the right moral values in this society. And so narratives can be stories, folk tales, it can be religion, but it can also be political ideology, and it can be the history in a scientific sense that we keep telling about ourselves as a people, as a country, so that we know who we are collectively. And then there's ethics, and the way that I distinguish between moral values, morals, morality, and ethics is that morality, moral values, are the values that tell us how to behave in familiar situations. Situations that people have been in before in our culture, our country, are embedded in stories. That's how we can tell the stories with these moral values. So whether you watch a Batman movie or read the Bible or tell some of the old Moldovan tales, there is a morality in there that tells us, so what is the good person, what is the bad person, and what should the right moral outcome be. Ethics are the principles behind it, and they are the principles that we can use when we encounter unfamiliar situations. And with the new technologies, with the major challenges that we're facing with artificial intelligence, climate change, and mass extinction of species, and all the other disasters that we have created for ourselves, we need ethics, because the moral values that we have are no longer enough. They cannot give us answers to the new kinds of dilemmas that we're in, and so we need to go back to our ethics and say, so what is it that we really do not want to happen? Well, we do not want suffering. We do not want to kill people. There's tons of stuff that we do not want. But what does that look like when we have artificial intelligence and other new things? So these 7 domains are in all societies. And it is my claim that whenever they're there, in balance, societies thrive. And I mentioned, the Soviet Union before. So imagine that one of these domains dominates all the other domains. And every other domain, whether you're a decision maker, a worker, or anything, you have to kind of consult with that one domain. If we look at the Soviet Union, if we look at Iran, if we look at Saudi Arabia today, the Soviet Union had an ideology, a narrative that defined everything, and if you did not comply with that, you couldn't do any of the other domains. And the same thing is going on in Iran and Saudi Arabia. There is a religion that defines everything, and if you do not comply with a religion, they will do really horrible things to you. So whenever these domains are not balanced, and whenever you're working in one of these domains, or an activist, or teaching one of these domains, if you do not have the freedom to think for yourself in this domain, reach out to the other domains and say, hey, what is your answer to this kind of question that we cannot solve inside this domain? You cannot have a balanced and wealthy, prosperous society and political freedom. So that is part of the idea with this model. The reason why I do not call it the societal rose, but the bildung rose, is that in order to thrive in your society, you need to understand some of all of these domains. That is how you can tell whether your own society or other societies are thriving. That is how you can talk to other citizens who have a different profession. And that is how you can look at your politicians and say, do they actually know what they're talking about? Or is it just me who doesn't get it? So part of education is to give us all this all-round bildung, this overall understanding of a little bit of everything in society so that we can contribute to a thriving society. I'm just going to check that I'm not speaking more than I'm supposed to, because that's a bad habit that I have. So good bildung, good education covers all of these domains. A few more words about the bildung rose and how to use it. So in a very complex society, all of these different domains have subdomains that contain some of the same things. And if we look at technology, for instance, the yellow one, it has its own production. It produces new stuff. It uses technology to create more technology. It has a certain aesthetics. I don't necessarily think all of it is very beautiful, but the guys who create all the new computers seem to think it looks great. There's a power structure. and we may have AI that replicates this power structure. I see a room almost entirely full of women. We need to shape up and have a say in how these new technologies are created and what the values are that are built into the AI, because a lot of the programmers are young men in the age from 15 to 35, and they may not be the demographic group that has the most consideration for not just women, but basically everybody who's not a guy between the age of 15 and 35. So we need to make sure that the new technologies actually serve and protect all of us. There is science behind the new technologies. There are narratives about what is good technology. One of the narratives in the tech industry is information wants to be free, which is basically just another way of saying, I don't care about legislation, I would rather just have all the data I can find. And then there's the ethics, and we need to work on those. So you can go around the other domains and have the same kind of exploration of what kind of subdomains do they have with all these same structures. The domains next to one another, if you work in one of them, if you're a professional in one of them, it's really easy to collaborate with a neighboring domain. We can take the one here between production and aesthetics. We have the entire marketing industry, commercials there. They're selling stuff that we produce, and they want to do it in a beautiful way so that they convince us to buy more. But there's also product design that allows us to have beautiful things around that are manufactured at an industrial scale. Domains that are like one time over or across the building rows have a really hard time communicating. And so you see production that has a really hard time, applying ethics. And you have scientists who have a really hard time dealing with the arts, and artists who have a really hard time dealing with the facts of science, because it's two different ways with regards to aesthetics and science. It's two fundamentally different kinds of knowledge. Scientific knowledge is as objective as it can possibly be and detached from the personal lives or any personal experience of the scientist. At least that is the ideal. Whereas the aesthetics, the arts, are as personal as possible and subjective, and the more unique you can create your new kind of knowledge, your new kind of the symbols that you're producing in your art, the better and more exquisite the art. And so if we can get those to collaborate, we can do almost miracles. This illustrates what can go wrong if one of the domains does not want to collaborate with the rest of society. Production can be exploitation, it can be slave trade, it can be ruining the environment, it can be weapons trade, drugs, and so forth. Technology can disrupt our societal structures, institutions. That is what is happening particularly with AI right now. Aesthetics that are way more complex and advanced than people are used to can create confusion. Science can be arrogant. Ethics can create anxiety, and then we have the narrative that can become narrow-mindedness or stupidity if that is the only thing you're allowed to do, is to see the world through that one narrative. So we need to have them collaborating, and for instance, if you do have a regime that only wants one narrative to rule everything, power will become controlling and abusive. And the more people want freedom in the other domains, and the less the political power wants to allow them to have that, the more violent and abusive it will be. I have yet to see a place where over a longer time anybody can insist on just one narrative without becoming extremely violent. So we need all the other domains. We need all the domains to collaborate and appreciate each other, and to learn and to communicate. Woohoo! So if we do have a collaboration between these domains, we can actually have, with production and ethics, sustainable prosperity. And if we have a technological development that takes into account the moral values and the way that people think about right and wrong, we can have a meaningful, a purposeful development. And if we have science and the arts collaborating, we can have a deep education, I would call it bildung, and understanding of the world, and it can have a richness that it otherwise wouldn't have. Yeah, so the complexity in each of the domains should, follow the others, and of course then everything becomes more complex as that happens within each of the domains, and it becomes more and more challenging to educate and get everybody to grasp some of all of it. But this is one of the real important issues that I want to bring into this, because the production and technology, the capitalist system is throwing money at those two domains, because that is literally where the money is made. That is where the banks give people new business loans so that they can produce more and create new technologies and make more money within the capitalist system. When we do that, and we've done that in the West for the past 50 years and pretty much forgotten about everything else, we miss the conversation in the middle about what might be possible. If we just do what is possible here and now and focus on that all the time, and we do not have a conversation about what might be possible, which is what we can do with the arts, with the political power, and with science, we're going to be dumber. And we're not going to use our technologies and production for anything but making more money and going out to the shopping mall on weekends in order to take the kids to the new temple. Because the last thing we don't do, and now there's a chair in front of it, is the discussion about what ought to be. That is what takes place in the narratives and in the ethics. What would be the right thing to do? What is it that we really want? And coming from Denmark, we don't do this either. I mean, we do not have a meaningful conversation about what ought to be. We do not have a meaningful conversation about what might be possible. We just constantly discuss how can we optimize, how can we privatize, how can we have constant economic growth, even though the planet cannot carry anymore. So we need to have a conversation that goes all the way around the rose. And so we need to find ourselves in this constant cycle of discussing what is possible here and now, what might be possible, and what ought to be. And that is how we can have thriving societies and societies with more bildung and less cars. I think that we can absolutely have all the technological and economic advances that we have achieved now, but we can also have the beauty and the bildung and the local communities and the transfer of knowledge through the across the generations, but also thriving local communities. And so that would be my answer to more bildung and less cars. Thank you.
Se aude? Da. Mulțumim foarte mult. Thank you very much. Cred că veți împărtăși impresia că am avut astăzi o prezentare și o prezentare de un concept foarte colorat. Vă rog să puneți întrebări dacă v-au apărut pe parcurs. Va trebui să vă dau microfonul ca să putem face și traduce. Pot fi și comentarii, dacă nu aveți întrebări, pot fi, eu știu, niște considerente pe care vreți să le împărtășiți.
And you're most welcome to ask in...
I ask if there are questions or make some comments, maybe. Ne-a lăsat un pic fără replică această noutate a conceptului. We assume that it's a very new concept, and probably we are speechless, right?
Yeah,
Aveți ceva de întrebat, de comentat? Da, vă rog.
if you can translate the... if it's not...
Bună ziua tuturor! Eu îmi cer scuze, eu o să pun o astfel de întrebare. Pentru a realiza acest nou concept, este nevoie de o schimbare radicală în în programul educațional, fiindcă este vorba, cred că, despre o nouă mentalitate.
Put it in place. Is it necessary to change all the educational programs because it looks like a new mentality or what is
So a new mentality, changing all the educational programs. No, you can add this slowly. You can change your priorities. If you look at the bildung rows, I don't know what topic you're teaching, but if you're teaching science, you can collaborate with the art teachers. You can bring in, so if you're teaching, for instance, what's it called? Like modern math that was invented during the Renaissance. You can teach about the Renaissance painters that were contemporary with the modern mathematicians. Or when you learn the numbers, we call them the Arabic numbers, but they're actually from India. But then you can teach the kids about the Arab culture and the Indian culture. You can connect the different kinds of science. And the storytelling, the reading stories to the kids, you can dedicate maybe half an hour every other morning or every Friday, or just start introducing it into the curriculum that is already there. If you study Christianity, take time out to read some text from the Bible and just enjoy the narrative. Or if you teach history, take some of the grim fairy tales and read them to the kids and say, so Little Red Riding Hood was, why do you have this story about a girl who walks alone through the forest and there is a wolf and a grandmother? What did the forest actually look like 400 years ago when this was one of the best evening entertainments that they had? So I think think outside your curriculum, reach across the rows, so to speak, and think, is there something that I'm already teaching that could have an extra dimension? Can I find a story about this that I can, include into the lecture? And I bet that the kids would actually remember more of it if you did so. If I can just say one more thing, we had a session earlier today about new kinds of education. And there was a question about, so how do you deal with kids that misbehave, kids who misbehave during class? In some places you blame the parents, and in other places you blame the teachers, and the teachers blame the parents, and the parents blame the teachers. And it's interesting with the schools that we have today. They were invented as part of the modern society when everybody had to learn to read, which not everybody had until 200-300 years ago. And so we industrialized education, and it's almost as if we have created a system that, all kids are curious when they're little. They ask questions constantly. They want to learn. Then we put them into schools and we take it away from them. And it's almost as if we created a system that kills the interest in learning. Instead of taking the questions from the kids and getting them, to experience that what they want to know, they can get to know, and they can get it to know it when they're interested in it. So the way that we created schools, we say, okay, everybody who turns 6 between, January 1st this year and January 1st that year, first grade. We don't care what they're interested in. We don't care how intelligent they are. We don't care what their talents are. They just have to be in a room with 25 to 30 kids of the same age. We're going to keep them silent for 45 minutes. If they need to pee, they have to wait. If they want to run around, we cannot allow that. And if they cannot follow the pace of what we teach them, we ask them in an intimidating way. I know a lot of teachers don't do that anymore, but we ask them, are you stupid? And that's not a way to teach children. And so we kind of turned it around instead of appreciating that children are curious and want to learn and create a system around the kids that work for them. And you deal with adult education, lifelong learning. That is also my approach to this. I do not teach kids. I have done that as substitute teacher. I have been in the classroom with 25 kids who were not interested in being there, and where my sort of criteria of success was that everybody survived. When I talk to adults and say we need more adult education, the world is changing. There's so much new stuff that citizens need to know in order to navigate the 21st century. Way too many adults say, school again? No way. We have done something completely wrong with the existing school systems, and we need to change that, because learning is actually one of the most pleasurable things that you can do. We all enjoy it when it's at the right pace and in the right context, and something that we actually care about. And I have not met somebody who's not interested in learning how their cell phone works. And even if you cannot figure it out, I'm one of them. You want to know, and you find somebody who can teach you, because this is important, and you want to get everything out of it that you need. So learning is a natural inclination, and we can do that much better.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? We are running short of time, but maybe there is a burning issue. Liliana, very short, please.
Vreau să vă mulțumesc foarte mult pentru ceea ce ați vorbit și ceea ce ați arătat la ecran. Și acum ați vorbit despre învățare. Vreau să am mai multe întrebări, poate și reflexii ale mele, dar m-ar interesa aici jocul, activitatea ludică. Este ea importantă, iată, în acest construct al dumneavoastră? Pentru că noi am devenit orgoholici, muncim și nu ne putem odihni. Iată, despre învățare și despre ludic. Este greșit? Este vicios să te odihnești astăzi? Când alături a toți muncesc și asta este pus pe pedestal. Mersi.
So games. In the Danish language, there are two words for playing. There is one kind of play, which is the open-ended, self-organized play that all children, actually all mammal children do. It's tumbling around, it's boxing, it's rough and tumble, and it's incredibly important because that is how we learn to read body language. So kids who get into fights, is actually really important because their brains get wired for being a physical body in the world. If kids are left to themselves to play and come up with stuff, they learn creativity. They also learn problem solving, and they learn to resolve conflicts on their own. And they learn that if I cannot figure out how to join this and be fun to be with, I will have no friends tomorrow. So it's an extremely important socializing process. So kids need to have freedom to play in that unorganized, non-supervised form where they just explore what it's like to be together with the others. And it's important that they are bored from time to time, because that sparks the creativity, and somebody says, shouldn't we pretend that this ball is a crystal ball and we can predict the future? And then they're suddenly all wizards who look into the ball and try to predict the future. That is playing, that is open-ended play. Then there's the play that is organized, and which we call games, where there are rules, and those are important as well. It can be sports, it can be board games. With regards to sports, it's not just that you learn to play according to certain rules, that there are winners and losers. It's really important that you learn how to lose, not just to win. It is also important, if we take football, soccer, there are all these white lines in the grass. And on one side of the line, you can take the ball with your hands, and there are certain rules. When you step into the other side of that line, you can no longer touch the ball with your hands. You can only kick it with your feet or with your head, and it needs to, reach the goal at one end of the playing field. This is a skill. To be able to step in and out of a different set of rules is a useful skill that you use for the rest of your life in so many places. You walk into a hotel like this and you immediately know that there's maybe not rules, but there are certain social expectations. You enter your home and there are other social expectations. So this is a skill that comes from using games. Then you can actually use games for teaching, and that's wonderful if you find good games. Some of the computer games online do the same thing, and some of them are just frying kids' brains, and we should get them to do something else.
Thank you very much. We are running short of the time. For sure, there is more space for discussion, but we are in a very tight time frame. I hope that we managed to provoke your interest towards looking to new models of behavior development, and we hope that people who are here in this room will be also interested in developing new areas in adult education. That is our area of expertise. And thank you again, Lene, for coming all the way through from Copenhagen, for being with us here, and for sharing this innovative approach towards joy of learning and happiness of being in harmony with our entire environment. Thank you.
Lene, thank you very much. We have a lot of work to do on our way to bildung, but we'll do the best. So, who knows, maybe in the next future we'll be there. Încă o dată aplauze pentru Lene, mulțumim pentru această prezentare. Rămânem aici, nu plecăm nicăieri, pentru că mai avem încă o lecție publică și de această dată una cosmică, oameni buni din experiență. O personalitate venită din Estonia o să ne povestească cum poate fi transformat un oraș prin creativitate. Însă, în calitate de moderator, îl vom invita aici pe un domn care cunoaște creativitatea din țara noastră foarte îndeaproape. Asta se va întâmpla în 10 minute. Asta înțelegem noi, da? Rămânem pe poziție, în 10 minute revenim. Vă mulțumim!